What's up, family? Transformation oftentimes leads to disorganization. And the reason that I'm starting with that is because today I am going to share some really good insight that I got from the last therapy session that I had. And this is what my therapist basically told me. And some of you might be able to relate to this. So, when God is transforming you, when you are evolving and moving from one state to another, one place to another, whether it's your spiritual life, your finances, your family, whatever it is, whatever the change is being worked on, it stirs things up. Some of you already know that. Like, I'm preaching to the choir. You like, I can attest to that in my life. There feels like there's this chaos. And I want you to know that that comes with the transformative process. It really is a part of it. It's all about how we respond to the disorganization. So I want to leave you with a few things, and they're kind of random because we had a really great conversation that went in different directions. But I'm praying to God that this blesses someone today. So I've gone through some changes in my life, some grief, some loss, some struggles. And one of the things that I have been asking God for and just meditating on was, God, bring me back to the person that I was. And not the identity that I had, but I'm thinking more of who it was that you called me to be. And I know that the physical aspect needs to be transformed so that it can line up with mental and spiritual and all those things. But I have been meditating like, God, bring me back home. Bring me back home. And the word homeostasis started coming to me. And when I looked at homeostasis, I'm like, oh, homeostasis is a state of, it's a state of being, right? It's almost like a formula that we design within ourselves. And some people will say, I'm kind of going back to like my foundation. But what I've learned with homeostasis is it changes within us depending on our situation and our environment. Because homeostasis is basically a formula that your body uses to keep you alive. So if you went into a state of survival, like for example, I lost my sister last year, if my body responded in a way that went into a state of survival, it created a new state of homeostasis. So it like erased the old formula and was like, okay, we got to create a new one because we got a new situation here. We're dealing with something different here. So I want you to think about that, and you can study up on it. But one of the things that I really had to own was that I have created the state that my body is in mentally and physically. Partially. I take ownership of that. But I also love myself and appreciate myself for saying you needed to do this to survive. I was actually trying to keep you safe in some type of way, even though it created all kinds of disorganization, all kinds of chaos. I want you to know that a homeostasis state is something that you can recreate and redesign. And when you do that, you not only do it for yourself, you recreate it for others. So your transformation is not just about you. It's about the other people around you. Because when you transform, other people naturally transform. Their state has to change in some way. Some other thoughts here was we were talking about the body and the mind and the past. What's really important is that we learn to let go of the things that we use to cover things up. So when I look back to last year, like I just kept myself so busy. And not like in a bad way. I mean, these were all positive goals and healthy distractions. But what she told me was she said, you need to stay in the feeling that your distraction was covering up. So being busy and being occupied, and like they say, don't mistake movement for progress. Moving covers something up. And naturally, as humans, we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be in pain. We don't want any of that. So we start doing stuff. We start trying to be this and trying to be that, and getting involved in this and getting involved in this and talking about. There's not the stillness that God really wants. Because he wants us to develop a self-awareness so that we can now develop power. We can't get power over something that we're not aware of. So we got to cut out these distractions and sit in whatever we're feeling and recognize it. I mean, of course, if it's something real deep and you got to get help, you got a therapist or doctor, I mean, do those things. But a lot of times, this is just growing pains. You know, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're sad. Sit in that. Don't bury yourself in it, but recognize it. Like, when I say sit in it, I'm like, don't get comfortable in it, but like, you know what? I feel a little lonely right now. I feel a little down. I feel a little scared, right? I'm worried right now. And do a body scan and ask yourself, where do you feel that emotion in your body? Target it, recognize it, and tell yourself it's temporary. It's temporary. It does serve a purpose, and we thank it for that. But we don't have to hold on to it. We can acknowledge it, we can recognize it, and then as God says, I have given you power and authority over it. Right? So remove the distractions and become more self-aware of what's going on in the body. And the last couple of things we talked about is, she asked me what God is asking me to do in my life. What do I feel like this call is? And am I answering this call to action? And sometimes we think the call is going to come in a certain way and sound a certain way and be packaged in a certain way. And it's not. Sometimes that call comes in pain, in suffering, in what we feel like is defeat. But will we answer that call? Because our soul is here to do something. And that's why God is calling us. That's why there is this disorganization, because he's transforming us. Like he said, be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And it can feel rough. But that's the part of the transformation process. All right. And the last thing that I want to mention, where is it? Oh, yes, this is good. She said, you know what? You're called to serve, but you're not called to sacrifice. And I know I use that word sacrifice a lot. But what this really meant to me was, there is a part of you that you must preserve. Sarah Jakes talks about self-preservation a lot. And she talks about how we can do one thing in one situation that preserves us, that keeps us safe, that makes sure that we're okay, that protects us. But if we stay in that form of preservation for too long, it can also destroy us. Just like the caterpillar. The caterpillar goes into the cocoon to become a butterfly, but if it stays in that cocoon too long, not only is it not going to be a butterfly, it's also not going to be a caterpillar. It's not going to be nothing. But that cocoon is a form of preservation that you need to go into for a short period of time. But you have to understand when to come out of it. You have to allow yourself to break out of it so that you can renew and become this other thing. So I want you to remember that you are called to serve. You are not called to sacrifice. God bless.